Isn't just an assassin. He's a precision instrument.
Not to take calculated risks. Eden doesn't understand that. You don't understand that.
January is usually that quiet movie month, but not in 2026. Because somehow studios decided to stack January with horror, action, sci-fi, and sequels that people have been waiting years for. So if you thought January movies were all fillers and maybe I'll watch it later vibes, think again. Quick favor before we start, hit like, subscribe, it helps the channel more than you think, and let's jump in. We're counting down the top 6 best upcoming movies dropping in January 2026, starting from number 6, all the way to the one that has people seriously losing their minds online. Let's get into it.
Isn't just an assassin. He's a precision instrument.
At number 6, Shelter, dropping January 30th, 2026 in the US. This one feels like that sneaky January release that people don't talk about much, until it actually drops and surprises everyone. Shelter stars Jason Statham, and yes, the moment you hear his name, you already expect grit, danger, and zero patience for nonsense. But what's interesting here is that this movie doesn't look like it's chasing loud blockbuster energy. From what's officially out there so far, the story follows a former assassin who's trying to stay hidden, only to get pulled back into chaos while protecting someone who suddenly becomes a very big problem for very dangerous people. That's all we truly know, and anything beyond that would just be guessing. But honestly, the mystery is part of why people are curious. Online chatter has been pretty consistent about one thing: this looks more grounded than flashy. Less explosions for the sake of it, more tension, pressure, and close call moments. And with it landing right at the end of January, it feels like that solid action movie you throw on thinking, this should be decent, and then end up way more invested than expected. It may not be the loudest movie on this list, but it has that quiet, dangerous vibe that action fans really appreciate. At number 5, Return to Silent Hill, dropping January 22nd, 2026. Okay, this one already has horror fans leaning forward. Return to Silent Hill isn't just another random reboot, it's inspired by Silent Hill 2, which many people still call one of the most disturbing psychological horror games ever made. And that alone explains why there's so much cautious excitement around this movie. From what's officially known, the story follows a man who returns to the fog-covered town of Silent Hill after receiving a mysterious letter connected to a woman he loved. Beyond that, details are intentionally vague, and honestly, that's probably the smartest move. Silent Hill works best when it messes with your head instead of spelling everything out. Online reactions are interesting because they're split in a good way. Some fans are nervous because past Silent Hill movies were hit or miss, but others are excited because this one is leaning harder into atmosphere, dread, and emotional horror rather than cheap jump scares. People are especially watching to see if the movie captures that slow, unsettling feeling the game is famous for. With a late January release, this feels like it could be the horror movie that quietly sticks with you long after the credits roll.
Not to take calculated risks. Eden doesn't understand that. You don't understand that.
At number 4, Iron Lung, dropping January 30th, 2026 in the US. This movie already feels like a wild card, and that's exactly why people are so curious about it. Iron Lung is based on the indie horror game that went viral for being absolutely terrifying with almost nothing happening on screen, and now it's being turned into a full movie directed by, and starring, Markiplier himself. Officially, the setup is simple but disturbing. It takes place in a bleak future where humanity is barely hanging on, and a convicted criminal is forced to pilot a tiny submarine through a massive ocean of blood on a dead moon. That's not a metaphor, that's literally the world of this story. And beyond that, details are being kept tight, so anything else would just be speculation. What people online are really talking about is the atmosphere. Fans of the game know it was all about sound, isolation, and dread, not jump scares. So the big question, and the big excitement, is whether the movie can keep that same suffocating tension for a full runtime. January 30th feels like a bold release date for something this experimental, but if it works, this could end up being one of the most talked about horror films of the year.
No one needs to die tonight. You have 30 minutes to get out of that house.
At number 3, The Rip, dropping January 16th, 2026. This movie jumps out immediately because it brings Ben Affleck and Matt Damon back together on screen, and any time that happens, people pay attention. The Rip is a crime thriller, and from what's officially been shared, it follows a group of Miami cops who stumble onto a massive stash of cash, and that's where everything starts to unravel. Now, just to be clear, details are still limited, so no one actually knows how far things spiral or who makes it out clean. But online conversations are already comparing the vibe to classic crime dramas where the tension comes from trust breaking down, not just gunfire. And that's exactly why people are excited. This isn't being pitched as a flashy action movie, it's more about pressure, bad decisions, and watching relationships crack under stress. Another reason this one's high on the list is the team behind it. Director Joe Carnahan is known for gritty, fast-paced storytelling, and pairing that with Affleck and Damon feels like a deliberate move to keep things intense and grounded. Landing right in the middle of January, The Rip looks like the kind of thriller that pulls you in slowly, and then doesn't let go.
It doesn't matter what happens, because we're always going to be together.
At number 2, Greenland 2, Migration, dropping January 9th, 2026 in the US. If you watched Greenland and expected a typical disaster movie, you probably didn't expect to feel that emotionally invested. And that's exactly why this sequel is getting so much attention. Migration picks up years after the events of the first film, with Gerard Butler and Morena Baccarin returning as a family that survived the end of the world, but now has to face what comes next. Officially, what we know is that the world is still broken, resources are limited, and survival isn't about hiding anymore, it's about moving. The family is forced to leave the relative safety they found and travel across dangerous territory, and beyond that, details are being kept under wraps. So anything else would just be guessing. Online, people are excited because the first movie felt surprisingly grounded. It wasn't just explosions and chaos, it was about family, fear, and impossible choices. Fans are hoping this sequel leans into that again, just on a bigger scale. With an early January release, this feels like the movie that kicks the year off with real stakes and emotional weight.
When that time comes, men will no longer communicate.
At number 1, 28 years later, The Bone Temple, dropping January 16, 2026 in the US. This easily takes the top spot because it's not just another sequel, it's a return to one of the most intense horror worlds ever created. 28 years later, The Bone Temple continues the universe that started with 28 Days Later, and just the title alone has fans uneasy in the best way. Officially, details are being kept very quiet, which honestly fits this franchise perfectly. What we do know is that this film expands the infected world even further and pushes deeper into how humanity has twisted and adapted after decades of survival. Trailers and early teases suggest darker themes, brutal choices, and a sense that the real danger may not just be the infected anymore. Online reactions have been wild. Longtime fans are excited because this is part of a planned continuation, not a one-off cash grab. There's also a lot of curiosity about how this movie balances legacy elements with new characters, without leaning too hard on nostalgia. Landing right in the middle of January, this feels like a bold move, and if it delivers, it could dominate horror conversations all year. This isn't just a movie people want to watch. It's one people want to talk about. And that's the list, 6 upcoming movies that prove January 2026 is not playing around. Drop your pick in the comments, hit like if this helped you decide what to watch, and subscribe to Watch with Jenny for more upcoming movie breakdowns. I'll see you in the next one.